and welcome everyone. Welcome. I am Kathy Mason. I'm standing in for my dear friends and co-creators, Noelle and Bob. And today we're going to get to have a wonderful experience. I have to say that I got to interview PMH Atwater this morning, and now I get to do this today. So tonight. So I'm just really loving being around people that have experienced another aspect of life and are courageously experience life now from that perspective. And I can't wait to hear about their journey and how they can help us, those of us that may have gotten a peek of this through meditation, but the rest of us that really don't want to have a near-death experience in order to experience this part of life. We're hoping that we can learn and be activated by your presentation today. So first, I'm going to go ahead and show the co-creators convergence information so everybody gets an experience with this incredible group. And then what we'll do is I'll introduce all of our speakers, and then I'll ask everyone that's in the audience here to please be with us, but to not have your video or audio on. Okay. So, and right now I'm going live on Facebook with us. And here we go. So I'm going to show the co-creators convergence video so that you all can get a great experience and understand why I love this group so much. Welcome everyone to, and here we go, Sheila Blake's coming in, to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Co-Creators Convo call. And tonight we're very, very excited to introduce you to a wonderful group of people that are going to be at the IONS event in Washington, DC coming up at the end of this month, and they're going to be on a panel. And so this is going to be an opportunity for us to get a bird's eye view, a preview of what they're going to talk about, but also to get a glimpse into the benefits and the wonderful, hi Sheila, the wonderful opportunity that we have with learning how to speak about mysticism and the mystical experiences of everyday life. So with that, I want to ask everyone that's here that is a participant and not on the panel, if they would please turn off their video camera and mute themselves. And then when we're done, we'll be happy to have you come back on camera so that we can have your presence and your knowledge for our discussion. So with that, I'd like to introduce everyone that I have the information for. And we actually have one more person, Jamie's here too, that is somebody that I just found out about today. So I'm wonderful, very happy to have you. So anyway, so first of all, I want to introduce Victoria Reynolds, who's my friend. We've been friends 10 years, and she's a spiritual luminary, an award-winning international speaker, a 6-time author, and we just published a book for her, and a broadcaster. Along with moderating this year's near-death and Spiritual Experiences panel, Victoria will be sharing insights from a profound spiritual experience which led to becoming a walk-in. And she is an Elohim angel. Then our next person is Shaun Martin. He's a healthcare worker. He's a graduate student. He's a recording artist. He's had a spiritually transformative experience. He will share his unique story of visionary experience and insight into the significance of STEs and modern day mental health and how they can be used to discover deeper meaning and fulfillment in our lives. And I'm not sure where the music is coming from. Don't know where that's coming from, excuse me. Okay, and Bree Lafferty is an award-winning author that suffered through most of her life with a rare chronic illness, as well as paranormal experiences that led her to near-death experience in 2017. And she will share how she's been called back to life to help others and start her own death doula business. Vicki Werner experienced her NDE in 2012 and has endured years of healing. She's delved deep into the cause of dis-ease, having a profound level of compassion with self-discovery and the healing process. She views trauma as a catalyst to expand consciousness and engage in self-love. Vicki is the author of The Secret to Healing and Recovery. And of course, everyone's going through trauma after the past 2 years we've had. And then, and last but not least, is Jamie. Jamie Tenner will be sharing about how in the summer of 2018, she had a spiritually transformative experience, and she was initiated into a complete change in perception where she came to know that the miraculous is reality and everything else is an illusion. So with that, thank you all for being here. And I think I'll start with Victoria again. And here we go. I will put on my timer and do the best I can to keep this on time. So here we go, not alarm stopwatch. Okay, so Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to invite you to speak.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much for inviting me and inviting the rest of the group here. As the moderator for this group, I was chosen to help put this group together and create something really magical when we're at the IANS conference. This particular group is called the Near-Death and Spiritual Experiencers panel. And so each person here is going to be sharing a little bit about their NDE or spiritual experiencers, the SE, spiritual experiencers experience, and what we've learned from that experience and how this experience has made us a better person, and also the impact we're making in the world with our experience. For myself, my spiritual experience, I did not have a near-death experience. However, one of the things I've discovered is that spiritual awakenings involve a near-death or a death of some kind. If it's the death of a loved one, a family member, a job, a business, there's something that occurs that causes a death of the old self that then brings us to our knees and wakes us up to a much greater spiritual perspective than we might have had before. So in my case, I was virtually an atheist. I grew up in an extremely religious environment, very fundamentalist, actually polygamist cults. And I wanted nothing to do with spirituality of any kind. I thought spirituality and religion were the same thing, and I wanted nothing to do with religion. What was interesting is that the 2008 recession was my near-death experience. It put me out of business. It put my husband out of business. It brought me to my knees. My house was in foreclosure. We ended up in bankruptcy. And both of my kids were diagnosed with learning disorders. We had no money at all. And my life, as I knew it, was over. What I didn't expect out of that, as I was trying to figure out how to put my life back together, was a spiritual experience. And it began with, I had actually gone to the doctor, and I was very depressed. I was having thoughts of suicide. And I didn't want to leave my 2-year-old and 5-year-old. The only reason I was still around was because of my children. Otherwise, I would have exited off the planet. And as I was standing in line ready to fill these antidepressant prescriptions, which seemed kind of pointless because, one of the side effects of antidepressants is suicide, I had this insight that what I needed more than anything was fresh air and sunshine. And sunshine is a natural antidepressant for me. And I hadn't been outside in years because I was taking care of these 2 little ones. And so I started walking in the morning, and what started to happen were these profound insights started flooding into my mind. I didn't know where they were coming from, but I started having these just massive aha moments every day. And I was I grabbed notebooks, and I was taking copious notes because this information was just flooding me on how to fix my life. And that ended up becoming my first book. But I had no idea at the time I was having a spiritual experience until I started really paying attention to these notes and realized that what I was experiencing was a reawakening, an awakening of the spiritual essence that I had once had when I was a child. And I remember being young and asking my parents and my religious leaders questions, and they couldn't answer them for me. But somehow I had an innate knowing about the way things were spiritually. And I was always drawn, not to religion, but drawn to, I went to church when I was a child because I was so drawn to the spiritual part of it, not the religious dogma part of it. And I would spend hours and hours and hours every day outside in the woods because that's where I felt most comfortable. And so in 2008, after this, my life started falling apart. I started discovering that what I needed most was a spiritual connection to myself. And so in this learning how to have a spiritual connection to myself, I had a very profound experience. I was standing in my kitchen one day. I had been coughing. I had the flu, which now I would call ascension flu because there's a name for it. But at the time I had the flu, and I had been coughing for about 3 weeks. And what was interesting about that particular flu was I had this sense that I wasn't sick. The sense that I had is that I was coughing old beliefs out of my system. I had started doing this, what I now call the transcendence process. I started working through and processing all of these beliefs that were fear-based that I had either picked up from my parents, my church, religion, school, and created myself as a way of making sense of the world around me. And I started purging all of these fear-based beliefs, and I could feel these beliefs actually coming up and out of my body, out of my genetic makeup, and coming out my mouth, and coughing and coughing and coughing up for 3 weeks. Now I know that it takes about 3 weeks for our genetic makeup to start to turn over. And so I was coughing up these old beliefs, and my new genetic makeup was being created at the same time. And so one morning I was standing in my kitchen and I was doing dishes, and I had a flood of love so profound and so pervasive, it consumed my entire body. It literally, I could feel it taking over every microcosm of my being. It was so powerful and so profound and so pervasive. It felt like I could see it coming out my fingers and my toes. And I just started crying because it was so overwhelming. And I just said, "What is this?" And the answer was, "We wanted you to know what love really is." And what I got from that experience is that love, this profound love, is love. It is the stuff everything is made of. It is the glue that binds everything together. It is that energy we call God. It is love itself. It is what causes form to come into form. And it's the energy that binds all things together. It's the stuff everything is made of. And I started seeing that the trees and the grass and the buildings and the tabletop and the floor and everything was made of love. And that I was love, the actual essence and energy of love, not the mushy gushy love that we have between each other, but this profound spiritual experience as love, as the energy that is and creates all things. And that changed my life, because from that moment, I realized what, for me, what spirituality really is, which is this incredibly deep and profound relationship with myself and with all that is. And that having that experience has now made it impossible for me to judge, hate, blame anything or anyone, because I'm able to see life through the eyes of love, through the eyes of Creator, through the eyes of this profound love that is all that is. And if love is all that is, then how could there possibly be anything that isn't love? And that experience, then happened from that experience as I started having a deeper, richer connection, not just to my physical human self, this vessel that I'm now in. I started having these profound communications with my higher self. Through a series of experiences, I realized that my higher self was this. Okay, at the time, my name was Margaret, and I was having this communication with a being named Victoria. And I thought I was doing an Esther Hicks kind of thing, where I was communicating with this other being, and this book that I was starting to write, and all these notes, copious notes that I was taking, I thought were coming from this entity named Victoria. And then one day, a friend of mine explained to me, that was me. Oh, that made so much more sense. So I was, in essence, channeling myself. And what has happened over the years is that higher self, this Victoria Elohim of freedom, who is this angelic being that was created by Source to help protect the freedom on planet Earth, began to merge down and embody into this body. And so now that's who I've become. I actually let go of the name Margaret. I let go of all of my attachments to being Margaret, and I am now all embodied as Victoria. And this experience of knowing that I have embodied in human form in service to the highest and greatest good of all life on earth is now what drives me in every moment of my life.
Thank you, Victoria. That's perfect. And it's a perfect segue for our next speaker. Victoria, would you like to select who should come next, or should I?
Oh, why don't you go ahead and do it?
Okay. Okay, so Shaun is next on my list. So Shaun, would you unmute, please?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
And go ahead.
Yes, please.
Okay, so my childhood was characterized by something that I call now as an awareness of a spiritual homesickness and a disassociative relationship towards my body. I had this vague impression that something of immense significance was occurring before the life experience of this physical organism became manifest. I had this longing to remember or return to that implicated source, even though I didn't understand what that was. The first funeral I ever attended as a young child was my great-grandmother, and I recall experiencing her open casket, her body, as related to the spiritual homesickness and the suspicion towards that I always had innately to what the body was and what I was, and if there was a difference. Now, this is abnormal for a young child to be thinking like this, but these are things that I remember. I remember feeling them more than I can say I was thinking them. I can't say that I thought them, but I remember having these vague impressions. of what life was, and just this curiosity about the meaning of life, how to live it sensibly, and entertaining the mysteries surrounding what happens to us when we die. I was curious about how to coexist with the body's reality and the what I call the internal observer, or the conscience, which grows into the egoic commentator and judge, and this battle between the intrinsic intuition and the extrinsic conditioning about what is right and wrong, or true and false, about how we navigate our lives. Being raised Christian, essentially, I was confronted with the conundrum of how spiritual morality, or God's criteria for being worthy of his love, as it was shown to me, and psychosomatic integrity, which is just living an authentic and organic life, how I reconciled those things with the mythologies of heaven and hell, and judgment and redemption and questioning and all these things. So this spiritual dilemma pretty much haunted me all my life and gave me an abnormally poignant awareness of my own mortality and a yearning to know God, or the higher reality, directly. It also kind of gave me an inability to envision my adult life. When I was a kid, I just never could see myself as an adult. I used to think that maybe I was going to die at a young age, and that was why I couldn't see it. Because a lot of you hear your peers talking about their futures and what they want to be when they grow up and all this stuff. And for me, it was always like I couldn't really access that. So I thought I must be someone who dies early, and I always had this background suicidal ideation that I think was an extension of the spiritual homesickness, was this desire to get back to this source that I was intuiting, but I don't know what it was. It was just always this feeling of, man, what was happening before this? Like I couldn't remember it, like I had amnesia or something. So this all reached a boiling point in about 2014 that led to an intense episode of suicidal despair. And it included a kind of prayer, I guess, looking back on it. I was crying out to a higher power, asking life, the universe, in so many words. I said, what do you want from me? That was the question. What do you want from me? I don't really know what I want. I'm not sure if I even trust what I think I want. What do you want? I don't even know if I was talking to anything. It was just a deeply primal impulse to call out to something. And this culminated in a series of what I can only call kind of surreal spiritual visitations and like visceral visions that involved what instinctually felt like a potential future for my body's life. And the thing that was so significant about it was because I could never see a future for myself, but in this moment, I was given one based on the question, what do you want from me? It was kind of laid out for me internally of what a potential that my body had that wanted to emerge. So since that was the first time I ever had any sense of my future, it being given from within was a big deal, because I'm like, okay, so there was a sense of a higher will giving me something. It wasn't me choosing it. But the visions involved an array of things, two of which were a collection of music that was to be made. And it was shown to me as being on iTunes, which at the time, 2014, seemed very far-fetched to me. I didn't know if that was possible. And it was implied in the visions that this would someday amount to something of value for the collective. I was also shown myself eventually making a living from traveling the world, sharing the story with people to help them get through their own dark times. So this is one of the first times that I've shared this story publicly, which is in itself a culmination of the visions that I had almost 10 years ago. I initially felt that the experience of these visions might have been delusions of grandeur, until a few years later, when some of them slowly started to manifest, and I was forced to continue to take them more seriously. So almost 10 years later, even more evidence have become manifest to reinforce these visions that have lived with me since 2014. They forced me to entertain that maybe there was something of value my life could amount to, despite the spiritual dilemma that has haunted my inner life. And Eckhart Tolle's story was the most powerful reference for me, because his description of his awakening and he had some dreams, some kind of visionary dreams about his books I think years in advance before he became who he became, he was always the best reference for me. That I wasn't losing my mind, because that was what going through all this. You just think you're just insane. Like, wow, like I think I might have, I don't know, like blown a fuse or something. But he was a very, you know, sober reference for something legitimate was happening. That even though at the time I didn't understand the extent of it, it has lived with me. The impression of the experience was so strong that it gave me a reason to outlive my suicidal despair. It gave me a reason to continue living, essentially, because it was like, you have a reason for being alive, and there's a lot of good that can be done on your behalf if you trust this. And I guess trust yourself, because it's always been a battle between trusting what's within me and then all the external criteria and, you know, conflicting information about what is truth on a spiritual level. So that's about it.
Well, thank you, Shaun. Do you feel that you're on a mission now from that?
I don't really think of it that way. Because I think I used to have a save the world complex. So I'm a little triggered by the word mission.
Okay.
You know, because I don't really think of it as like, oh my gosh, like the world just won't be all it can be if I don't give what I have to give. It's not really that kind of thing. It's just I'll do my best to put that forth, you know, in the opportunities that present themselves in my life. But I don't feel that if I were to pass away today, I don't think that, you know, the great scheme of the universe would be any different, you know, but I'll do the good that I can. That's kind of how I feel.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you. You do have a few more minutes if there's anything else you want to add before I go on to the next person. You were so succinct.
Yeah, I had some notes written out because it was a lot, you know, I had to condense it down. So no, it worked out pretty good. I think I got all that I wanted to say.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And I'm sure there'll be questions for you after
Yeah, sure.
this. So Bree, you are up next. Please unmute. And I'm excited to hear. Thank you, Shaun.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share with my other panelists here. I'm really excited to meet you all in DC in person.
Bree, your sound is a little low. Could you possibly increase the sound a little bit?
I can try. Maybe.
Okay, thank you. It's almost like that tunnel behind you is eating up the sound.
It might be. Is this better?
It's a little better, yeah. Yes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So my story started probably back when I was 10. A few crazy things started happening. We had just moved from one state to another. My parents wanted to go back home to Colorado, and they loved the small towns they grew up in. So they chose a quaint little town in Colorado, and a beautiful home. However, it was not what it appeared to be. And I started experiencing a lot of paranormal and metaphysical things. I started seeing ghosts. I started seeing entities. I started seeing auras, all within the span of maybe 4 years. And at first, the ghosts were fine. They didn't really bug me. They just kind of hung out and they didn't pay me attention. But then it started to shift into scary things. There is this doll that turned its head and its eyes glowed red. It was like a 100-year-old doll without any eyes. So that terrified me. And I also grew up as a Christian in a Christian household, but our church was basically, no, those things don't happen. Those things aren't real. So it was a conflicting of interest. Seeing auras was taboo. Seeing ghosts was taboo. These entities were taboo. However, it wouldn't be until many years later that I found out my sister saw the same things I did at different times, and she reported back to my mom. Our friends saw it. We just never talked about it together. So I had no idea all of this stuff was going on. And things were just getting horrific. I started having horrific nightmares, couldn't sleep, major insomnia, ended up with a really chronic, rare illness and was undiagnosed for 8 years. And the symptoms were super bizarre. So we didn't know if they were related or it was the stress of all of the metaphysical and paranormal things causing the illness. We didn't know. And so I think 15 years later, I was living in an apartment by myself, still having this illness, and we had tried everything at this point to get rid of the illness. We tried Western medicine, Eastern medicine, traditional herbs, Reiki, chiropractor, acupuncture. I mean, you name it, meditation, we tried it. So we finally kind of discussed maybe trying some spirit release therapy. We found out a Ouija board was played with the previous owners and perhaps maybe opened an unwanted portal. So we were like, why not give it a shot? We've tried everything else. So we started down the road with a spirit release therapist, and she warned you can get sick during the process. Your body could become ill, especially with the length of time I'd probably been attached. So we started down the road and I got sick, and I didn't just get a little sick. I got really sick. I don't know I don't remember if I had fever, but I remember I couldn't hold anything down. I couldn't keep anything in my stomach. I was in the bathroom almost 24/7. It was really rough, and I was getting sicker and sicker. And after 3 weeks of this, and I'm just going downhill, we asked for it to stop because my body physically couldn't take it anymore. And the entities that had been attached to me were super pissed off. So they became more violent. I started having hallucinations, and they were attacking me physically, psychologically, and I was exhausted. I was exhausted from my heart, from my soul, from my body. And at that point, it was 2 a.m, 6.5 years ago. And I was in prayer with my mom because, I couldn't fight these things. The spirit release therapist couldn't fight these things, and it was really rough. So I told her good night. She believed I was going to try to sleep, and I knew that wasn't an option. So at that point, I surrendered. I called out to the only God that I knew of and pleaded for help. I said, I cannot do this anymore. It's in your hands. Whatever happens is in your hands. And immediately I felt the entities and dark things ripped away from my body and tingling in my palms and my feet, and a big booming voice in my head that said, are you ready? I didn't know what I was being asked if I was ready for. I just knew something answered my prayer. And so I said, yes. And then I felt 3 hard pounds on my chest, and my heart stopped, and I left my body. I left Earth. I knew nothing of a physical body. I knew nothing of this physical realm. I was in this velvety black love. I was home, and I realized, oh, am I dead? And 3 monks appeared and just passed by floating, gave me a shit-eating grin, like, if you only knew. I then went into this beautiful tunnel, just this brilliant blue light that we can't see here on Earth, at least I can't, filled with ones and zeros. And I'm going through it at supersonic speed, being downloaded with amazing information. And it's like the universe is just being downloaded within my soul. It was fabulous. End up in this white space filled with a room full of numbers, and this presence behind me. I relate them kind of to Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, this Christ consciousness, basically. And I grabbed the numbers, threw up the numbers and said, no wonder you love creating, because I realized everything was created with these numbers. Then I ended up in a space with other beings. I'm pretty sure they weren't all human. And that was probably the most fun, because as soon as I had a thought, it would happen. So there were beings sliding down trees covered in snow. I'm like, I don't think I like snow. Instantly, it turned to lush green, and I'm sliding down the trees like Tarzan. I was a robot. I tried to learn to fly. I mean, it was just like, you had a thought, it happened. I was a snowman at a point and saw fire. I'm like, wonder if I get too close, if I'll melt. Sure enough, my thought took me there. I got too close and I melted. I wonder if everyone will put me back together. Sure enough, everyone put me back together. And we were all living in this beautiful harmony, symphony that just, we spoke without speaking. We heard without, listening. And it was wonderful. It was oneness. It was singularity. And then I came up into this boundary where here you can see beyond a barbed wire fence. However, in this place, I could not. It was all fuzzy behind, and a bunch of beings were crossing a land bridge to the other side. And I wasn't given an option whether I could go or not. I couldn't go. And I ended up in one last space with 7 magnificent beings behind me and this beautiful scroll in front of me with golden script, just absolutely elegant. And that's when my ego came back and said, ha, you're showing this to a human. Why I suddenly remembered I was a human, I don't know. But the scroll rolled up and I popped back into my body. And as weird as it is to feel your heart stop, it is beyond weird to feel it start again. And that's my experience.
Thank you. Thank you. And I hope we get to hear more about that because that's amazing. And your background is so perfect. How did you ever find that? My goodness, it's so perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you. So the next person up for tonight, and I'm sure the panel will be a little bit different, is Vicki Werner. Vicki, could you? Yeah, there you are. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be part of this amazing group. In 2004, I was holding my 1-year-old in my arms, and I was 11 weeks pregnant with our youngest in my husband's medical office when 6 U.S. Marshals entered our business and handcuffed and shackled my husband in front of me. My husband was a medical doctor, but he practiced alternative medicine, and that unfortunately was a threat to the medical industry. He was accused of a crime he did not commit and was in prison for 5 months. We finally got him home a few weeks before our baby was due. My husband he was an OBGYN originally and moved into alternative medicine due to an injury to his hand. And so he arrived home just a few weeks before our baby was due. It was obviously an amazing gift to have him home, but I lived every moment in enormous amount of stress and high level of PTSD. I never even knew somebody who had gone to prison, and my husband doing so under terms where we thought it was going to be an open and shut case. He was accused for medical billing fraud. And so we thought, well, it's easy. All we have to do is show HIPAA that didn't occur, although he was set up because of the threat to the medical industry. So by 2012, my maladaptive stress response was my new normal. And I also knew that I was breaking down. We spent many years trying to heal the trauma that we had experienced. And one of the experiences we did in the summer of 2012, we went on a sacred journey down to Peru and participated in an ayahuasca ceremony. I sat on a mat on Monkey Island, 4,000 miles away from home. And I prayed to God for 2 things. I prayed to help heal the trauma that was in my body. And I also prayed for me to learn to love myself, because I was raised in a family where my value was in the work that I accomplished rather than a baseline for my being. And I knew that in order for me to heal, that needed to change. I had a horrible experience with the ayahuasca. And during that experience, I got very sick. We arrived home. I hadn't recovered. I was very weak and fragile and chronically nauseous. I was sick every moment of every day. And that was in the summer of 2012. In December of that year, as I was trying to recover in my bed, A soft, warm glow appeared in my room. And there was a pulling sensation, a gentle pulling sensation from my core. And I suddenly was standing at the foot of my bed, staring at the fragile body before me. I could see that my face was contorted due to the enormous amount of pain. I often say that on a pain level of 0 to 10, it was a 28. I was in excruciating pain. And my hair was a mess because of just so much restlessness due to the pain. And I had immediate compassion for the body that I was looking at and the struggle that was that journey. I heard my husband's laughter down the hall and immediately was transported and was standing in the living room where my husband was sitting with our young daughters on the couch, and he was watching The Simpsons. And I had an enormous amount of love for my family. And admittingly, I was a little annoyed that he was watching adult humor with our children. So that doesn't leave when you leave your body. You still have the same sensations. I watched them with an enormous amount of love and knew that they were not aware that I was there. Instantly, for some reason, we were transported, and we were standing on a long pathway. My husband and children were all on the top of this pathway, and I was very confused as to why we were there. I turned to my husband first, and I could see tears were streaming down his face. And he said, "I love you, babe. I will be okay." And that caused more confusion for me. So I turned to each one of my children, and each one of them were clearly in an enormous amount of distress as well. They were all crying, but each one of them individually said, "I love you, Mom. I will be okay," until I got to my youngest, Sophie, who was 7 at the time. And she was the one that I was pregnant with when my husband was taken. I could see that she was in an enormous amount of distress, and the trauma of losing me was too much for her to bear. So she just was frozen in trauma and just clung tightly to her father as I was being pulled away from my family. Further on the path was my parents, who were divorced when I was 9, but they were standing together. All of my siblings were standing there, and they all told me that they would be okay without me. No one pleaded with me to stay or begged me to not leave. They all just kept saying the simple sentence, "I will be okay." Beyond them was extended family and friends. And so I recognized that every person who would be impacted about me through me dying was there to tell me that they would be okay without me. Before me was a large building that was dark and had sharp spires on the roof, a very dilapidated yard. Everything was dead in the yard, and there were black ravens perched on the roof staring down at me as I approached. Now, my natural inclination is to avoid anything frightening in the world, and I don't ever go to any scary movies, but I wasn't afraid at all. And as I went through the gate, everything transfigured. The building rounded and had a beautiful warm glow, and the yard transformed into this vibrant green and lush, alive. And you could feel life emanating from the building itself. The ravens even transformed into beautiful white doves. As I entered through the threshold that I was being drawn through, I entered the building. And as I did, there was 3 luminous beings that met me at the entrance. They told me that the pathway was my spirit's version of my journey home. They also told me that I was in transition due to enormous trauma to my physical body. And although my physical body was obviously back at home in bed, that they also told me that there are many layers to the human experience. And at that moment, my form, I looked exactly like I did in bed, but my form dropped from me and looked like a crumpled up outfit on the floor without any structure or form. At that time, and it was very unusual to see my body on the floor, but I looked down and I looked exactly like all the 3 of them. At that time, 3 more beings entered the room, and 2 of them picked up my discarded shell of my body, and another one entered carrying a bowl of crystal water with a crystal sponge and began bathing that body with this crystal sponge. They were telling me that they were attempting to help heal this layer of my physical existence. Then they moved me into another section, and in front of me were 3 very large statues that were made of gold and precious gems. Beyond the statues was a darkened passageway. And I was told that I am not to go beyond those into that passageway at this time. I knew that it was a barrier between the physical and the spiritual world, and that if I were to cross beyond those statues, that I would not return home to my family. At this time, we went to the first statue, and they said that they were giving me 3 gifts, and the first one was the gift of sight. At that moment, I saw simultaneous videos of my entire family as they would live their lives without me. I saw that my husband pulled away from my family due to the grief, and I saw that each of my children were the challenges that they would have, that my oldest daughter would have moved home to help raise her younger siblings, that my parents and families tried to help support my children and my husband, but the trauma was very challenging, and my children really struggled. But eventually I saw that as they entered into adulthood, that they, like many other people, eventually were okay, until I saw the video of my youngest daughter, Sophie. And they told me that she would be stuck in trauma, that the trauma of losing her mother was too much for her, that she had a very important mission on this planet, and that she would not live her life journey, her life purpose without me. Obviously, this shocked me as a mother, and I turned to them and I said, I have to go back. Sophie needs me. Instantly, I was back in my bed and back in unimaginable pain. A few hours later, my husband entered, and he came in and told me that we did a prayer, and he prayed for my family to heal, and he prayed for my healing as well. And I couldn't respond. I was in bed for another 8 months and in extremely amount of pain for many years. So my book on the secret to healing and recovery is about that journey home.
Wow, Vicki, I want to hear more about the crystal sponge bath that you got, what they did. That can't wait to hear more about that. But thank you. Because we're doing timed things, we'll stop here. And then the next person we're bringing Jamie in, but I don't see her right now. Is she here? There she is. Yay. Okay, so Jamie, you have the floor.
So in the summer of 2018, my life seemingly fell completely apart. I was keep it off and maybe not wake up. I went to bed and I was awakened in the middle of the night to the most amazing feeling of love that I could have ever imagined. I very quickly fell back to sleep, and then I woke up the next day changed, taken off a pair of glasses or a lens and put on a completely different lens. Everything was different. And I started to ask myself, okay, am I dead and don't know it? Am I in a coma? Am I crazy? Or am I having some kind of God experience? So I decided that I wanted to go and visit a friend, because why not? So I drove a whole bunch of miles to go visit one of my best friends camp. So at this point, I knew without a doubt that I was the creator how to do that. I was spending about half of my time in heaven, in this really heavenly, loving space. And then the second half in what I would describe as in absolute despair. So I was very nervous about this drive home because I knew how I wasn't doing great, but I had to go. So I take off on this road, on the road home, and like, I don't know how to, self-loathing, attempting to combat this. And I was very, from my house, I just decided to surrender. So I just surrendered to whatever, like the good, the bad, whatever, just coming at me. And I had this sensation that I was no longer driving my car. I had the sensation that I was like going to pass out of my body. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen right then. I ended up getting home and maybe brushing my teeth, which was my common practice. And I went to bed. And then again, in the middle of the night, I'm woken up to hearing these voices. There's these voices, and they were like talking, like right from my face, and they're talking like I'm asleep, like I'm not aware. And so I agreed to some treatment. I didn't know what treatment it was, but I was like, okay. I knew they were benevolent. That was what I didn't know. I could not see them, but I could hear them. And so I wake up the next day completely healed. Around this time, I'm trying to look up what is happening to me. I'd never heard of anything like this. I had no one to talk to because everyone in my family and my friends, everyone thought I had really lost it. Like I was crazy. And that was a very, very hard part of all of this. But so I went to the internet and I was hearing there were all these celestial events that went on in the summer of 2018. And I was hearing about all this stuff about ascension and awakening and the new earth and heaven and earth and all of these things. But anyway, so I had agreed one day to meet a friend for dinner. So we meet for dinner, and then I walk out and there's this storm. So there's these clouds and there's lightning and there's rain and wind. And so I lived in a little town, a very small town, and the town square just cleared out. So there was just me. I'm standing in front of this fountain that is glowing the most beautiful blue color. And all of a sudden I hear in my head to drop my purse, and I am standing there and I have no idea what is going to happen. Although I did have the thought that maybe I was going to be beamed up in some UFO, but that did not happen. And I was just standing there and I was saying this mantra that I trust in the goodness of God, that I trust in the goodness of God. I trust in the goodness of God. And it was at this point that I started to feel the sensation of electricity going all the way through my body, going through my arms, my legs, all the way through my body. I'm standing there, am I doing this right? What am I doing? What is happening? I had no idea what I was doing. And then I could hear these entities or these beings about 35 feet away from me, as if they were at a sporting event and they were cheering in some way, as if seeing me doing something. I had no idea what I was doing. At one point, I got pretty tired, so I laid down. I was still shaking, still shivering, and all of a sudden I had the sensation of birthing a new idea. Birthing a new idea about people on the planet who are marginalized, gay people, people with color in their skin, Native people, people with differing abilities. And I felt like I was birthing some kind of new idea on the planet. I'm not sure how long I was laying there, but at some point there was still lightning, and I decided to ground myself to a tree. So I got up and I walked over to the tree, and
Jamie,
home.
your internet is unstable, so you might want to
Okay.
try. You might want to try turn off your video, but keep your audio going.
Okay.
Okay, so because that may come through stronger. Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry
Okay.
for the inconvenience. Oh, maybe not.
I mean, could you hear
Oh, I
before?
hear part of it.
Hello?
Actually, the last little section was good. It's just in and out, I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
Okay, well, I heard with the where you stopped or where I interrupted you, I apologize, was that you said your mantra that you believed in the goodness of God.
So you didn't hear anything after that? Oh, no. Did you want me to start over from there?
Well, you're certainly, if you want, sure.
Okay, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. So I was saying this mantra about trusting in the goodness of God, and then all of a sudden I felt this electricity going all through my body. So this electricity, this feeling of electricity started to come through my legs and up into, like, it just completely took over my body. And then I could hear these entities. I could not see them, but I could hear them about 35 feet away from me. And they were saying, it was like they were at a sporting event or something. They were seeing me doing something. I had no idea what I was doing. And then I got very tired and I laid down. There was still rain, still lightning, and I was laying on the ground, shivering. And I all of a sudden had this sensation of birthing an idea. The idea of about marginalized people on the planet. Native people, gay people. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm wrapping it up, but let me just, I'll be done in just a minute. And so I ended up going home at that point after I had this experience where it felt like I was birthing this new idea. So at about, or an idea, and maybe not necessarily a new one, but so at this point I was meditating for several hours a day. And one morning, it was two mornings later that I woke up before sunrise. I knew that significant about that sunrise. It could have been an eclipse or something, but I got up and I was again, I didn't understand why I was chanting the way that I was chanting. It felt something like I was chanting, and I was starting to have the same sensations that I had with the thing that had happened a couple of days before, where I was like birthing this idea of freedom for marginalized people, especially Native people, gay people, people with color in their skin, people with differing abilities. And I started to chant and I started to demand freedom. And I started to just emphatically call for freedom. And I mean, I was just saying it from a place in my being that I didn't even know existed. And then after that, I realized that whatever was done was done. later that day, I had received not one, but two pictures of myself. It was obviously me, but these pictures seemed to be taken from outer space. And it was at that point that I realized that I was not alone and that I knew without a shadow of a doubt that the miraculous was actual reality and everything else is just an illusion.
Perfect. Perfect. That's a perfect place. Thank you, Jamie. And I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but we did get to see your beautiful face for part of this. But
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
oh,
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
oh, good. Well, this is great. So everyone, if you could come back, the panel, if everyone could come back on. And then I'd love to see what the next part, I'm going to put gallery on. And Victoria, if you can come, there we go. And Shaun, great, great, great. Okay, so what I would love to ask everyone to think about and see how we can share the benefit of your experience. So that's in the past, the 2 years ago when COVID first started, our theme for IONS was you don't die. And then the next year was a similar theme of not being fearful about death. And all of you have had a viewpoint of being out of body or of an expanded awareness that is a huge gift to everyone that's going to listen to this now and years to come. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind sharing part of that perspective and the benefit of this. So I guess we'll start with Victoria again, since we're going full stream. Thank you, Sheila, for getting on.
Thank you, Kathy. You know, for me, it is this understanding that one, that love is all that is. And it's really provided me with the ability to really know what it means that heaven is within. That our experience of what I call the great human experience, that having this human experience really is that we might have joy, and that understanding that fear actually is an illusion. It's a projection of a thought or belief that we place onto a future that doesn't even exist yet, or beliefs that we've created about our past experiences. And when we start to understand that love is all that is, and all that is love, and that if we can learn to see all of life that way, then heaven actually becomes our human experience. And when we talk about new earth and heaven on earth, it actually starts, you know, coming home to heaven within ourselves. And I wish that experience for every being on earth, because it's beyond words what it's like to just go through life with this pure absolute knowing that all really is well, and that love has me.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. So Shaun, you're up next.
So I think that the primary benefit of near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences is to have a more, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, a more direct interpersonal reference for spiritual things that isn't just institutionalized. I think that there's something to be said about people who have their own experience of what would be considered mysticism, which is their own direct personal spiritual experience that alters their worldview and the way they show up in their lives. I think that's different than like pledging allegiance to a doctrine, an institutionalized doctrine. I think that's one of the main things that these things provide is, and I think just intuitively, for me personally, it was just a more reasonable framework to metabolize like the spiritual reality than religion was. It was just, as I couldn't intuitively religion, I was like, like I think that there's something in there. Like I think that the original intention of religion was noble, and then it got weaponized, to as a control system. But I think that the spiritual impulse that religion sought to nurture is very innate in the human being. And I think that that's true for even the indigenous peoples who didn't have institutionalized religions. Native Americans, they had a sense of the Great Spirit, this awareness of their place in, the biosphere. I think you don't need a religion to tell you that. There's something very primal in us, I think, that seeks and moves towards that. So I think that spiritually transformative experiences and near-death experiences is a very, I think it's hard to taint this thing because it comes from the people. It comes from the individual people who have had experience rather than institutions who have these ulterior motives.
Perfect. I'm just going to add there. I love what you just said. I had a spiritually transformative experience over 20 years ago, and I wake up every morning thinking about it still. So that's all I can. I mean, when you say that, it's your personal relationship with that expanded self that
they live with you. Those experiences live with you and grow with you.
Yeah. Oh, hopefully. Hopefully that I'm glad about it. So, okay, Bree, you're up next. Thank you, Shaun.
So, for a long time I was like, why did this happen? What's the point? I thought I was cured from my rare neurological disorder. I went into remission for 2 years after my near-death experience. So that was really exciting. I also was so drawn to volunteer in hospice because I was so excited knowing where everyone was going. So I could hold an authentic, happy place, not like, haha, you're dying. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for your next adventure. You get to leave all this pain and hardship and you're about to go have so much fun. So, I was still working full time, 60, 70-hour weeks at corporate America, and volunteered as much as I could on the weekend, but, also only had the weekend. So it wasn't until I had brain surgery in last year, 2022, and a few months later got my dream job in corporate America and turned it down, that I was like, why did I do this? It's a lot of money for a 30-year-old. I'm well recognized. It was like, why did I turn this down? Why did I step away from everything I knew about corporate America? And I got back into that space that I was in my near-death experience, and I was told it's time to stop feeding your ego and start feeding your soul. So I have full steam ahead, dove into what that meant, what that means. I started my own death doula business so I can be fully present with anybody, from the second they think about, I want to, write down my thoughts and my wishes in case of an accident or an illness, to people who are actively dying. And that just needs that non-judgmental, non-biased space, because I don't care what your skin sac is. I don't care what your beliefs are. I don't care what your religion is. I know, I'm going to be happy for you no matter what they are. You're going to a wonderful place, no matter who or what you believe. And I can just be that, kind of back and forth conversationalist to help people get through their own spirituality and, their own kind of processes and their own programs that they want to get rid of at the end. So that's really exciting. I was told to write some books to start. And so wrote my first book, which is now an award-winning one already. And that's really exciting. And found out how to get back to that space anytime I want, which is phenomenal. And I have now actually cured my chronic illness through getting back to that space. So I'm excited to see how that also transitions into helping others. And Shaun, I still have the Save the World complex. My goal is to heal the world.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so Vicki, you're next.
Thank you. I have a little bit more regarding that as far as my perception. I've been a past life regression therapist since 2007, and I've been present with a number of deaths, including my mother-in-law who passed away 3 days ago. And so I was with her on that journey. And so it's just given me a lot of food for thought. I feel like it took me a long time to find gratitude in my experience. As I mentioned, after my near-death experience, I was bedridden for 8 months and in so much excruciating pain. And as I was coming out of that, my daughter was getting married, and I was hoping I was going to have enough strength to be there for her. And the night before her wedding, our grandson passed away. And so we've just had this little bit of a dance. And the very next day after my mother-in-law passed away, Monday, my niece got married. And then yesterday I dropped my daughter off to college. And so there's just this wave of experiences. But I feel that like I said, it took me a number of years, and I sought every healing modality that exists on this planet in my search for healing. And I obviously looked outside of myself. As Victoria mentioned, it is within, and our healing is within, but it's helpful to know that there's a bigger picture outside of us, and there's a support team that we don't always see. And so what I know for sure in this moment is I contracted for all of that. I set myself up for that experience for my own evolution and my own growth. And part of my mission was to have great empathy and compassion. And nothing brings more empathy and compassion than suffering your own journey. And so I feel like I view humanity through a bird's eye view of when there's immense challenges. I want to hold their heart and cheer them on, and also congratulate them, because the dark night of the soul is the journey that each one of us will go through eventually to awaken to our mission and to our path. And I would say my biggest statement regarding all of this is love is the gift we can give ourselves and others. It is the greatest gift we can give. And healing is never going to be a passive experience. It's a conscious decision to embrace your shadows and your fears. But if you do so, you will discover your greatest gifts that you could ever impact the world with.
Wow, we all should be clapping. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so Jamie's next, and then Sheila, you must have a question. So, okay, so Jamie's next, and thank you. That was beautiful, Vicki. Thank you. Well, all of your answers have been beautiful. Thank you.
So I can't say that I haven't taken on my journey to share my message, because I talk about a lot of things in social media, and I have written a book. I'm almost done with a nonfiction novel right now. But I think for me, it was more about the becoming. I don't think that it was becoming someone else. It was becoming, like, allowing myself, like the way I describe it is that I was like put into a water, you know, those toys, and then they expand and you can never put them back. And so my hope is that, and I do this, my hope is that in my desire to be the best of myself, that in and of itself would be what my experience did for humanity or the world or whatever. So I think it's more about what we or I become, and that radiating out and having that effect in the world.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, Sheila, you must have a question. Sheila's had her own trauma. She's been through 2 floods in her house and 3. Oh my God. I only knew about 2 of them. Oh my God. Anyway.
So, gosh, I'm so happy to be here. Kathy, you don't know this, but for the last 6 to 9 months, I have been listening to and watching NDEs nonstop every day, mostly on YouTube. I don't know why I'm insatiable to learn about this. The one takeaway I've got for sure is that I'm now living in the illusion and the other side's the reality. So I'm really grateful to know that now. And I see everybody shaking their heads. So I got confirmation. My brain is full because I'm at the Parliament of World Religions right now. And we've been just doing this interfaith love fest for days. And there's just so much. And when I heard about this, so I was like, oh, I gotta go get on that call. My question is this, because I'm so aware of what's going on in the world that's not a love fest yet. And based on all y'all's experience, and I don't even know who to ask specifically, but clearly we've all agreed to different missions here in the service of humanity and love. What do you have to say about erasing the divisions that we create between, not just between faiths, but obviously, there's always somebody that's the marginalized other. And I heard, that there was some ceremony around that too in one of y'all's experiences. So, yeah, I'd just like to hear more about how can we bring that peace to earth and expand the love.
Who wants the mic? Oh, good. Okay, Bree wants the mic.
So that is a concept a lot of people struggle with. And I really think that we are not, going to see that, end of division in our lifetime. I think it needs to be a whole world effort. And I think we're on the right track. The more, near-death experiencers, spiritually transformative experiencers, people who are meditating and getting to this other side and feeling the love and the connection and the wholeness and the oneness. I believe more and more people around the world are doing it. And as a world, we are growing into this new transformation, but I think it's going to take a long time. So I think honestly, what we can do is just help that growth. I don't think we're going to see that disappear in our lifetime. Our world is a world of division, and you see division in absolutely everything. Sex, gender, religion, politics, doesn't matter. That we are a world of division, black and white, good and bad. So just bring the love, talk about your experiences, encourage the love, live in love. If you live in love, other people see something's different about you and they want what you have, and they start to figure it out. So that's my 2 cents.
That's great. I think Shaun was up next here, and then Vicki.
So I think about this a lot, because we are obviously contending with malevolence in the world a lot of the time. I think that our individual responsibilities are to kind of retract our projections of our own shadows. I think that is what we can do as individuals, is to be conscious of our own shadow and how that is projected in the blame game and the victimization and the us versus them mentalities, that it's always them over there doing something evil. I think it's very important that for me personally, whenever I'm exposed to evil in the world, I always view it as some aspect of myself. Like that evil that I'm seeing, that's me, like that's us, it's we, it's not them. It's like, it's all of us, because it's easy to make it like where you're the good guy and they're the bad guy. And it's like, no, like it's all of us. And I think the most that we can ask from ourselves is to integrate those qualities in ourselves to the best of our ability, which I think undermines the movement of, hatred toward others. Because a lot of it has to be an extension of something within yourself that has been neglected or siloed or compartmentalized. So I think the more that you allow the things about yourself that you maybe aren't crazy about, that's essentially the shadow, is the things that we are but wish we weren't. But you still are those things, and we project them onto people. If we can integrate those aspects of ourselves and come to an acceptance of our own darkness, I think that we don't project that darkness, and in that way, we don't contribute to the collective darkness to the same extent.
Thank you. And then Vicki, thank you, Shaun. And then Vicki.
Yes, what I would like to add is we live in a world where there has been an enormous amount of complacency. We build our lives. I mean, it's been designed for us to be overstimulated and overstructured and over-obligated. And our children now are that way as well. And that system is non-sustainable. We will all recognize that every system in our world is in the process of breaking down. And that includes our political system, our healthcare system, our education system, our financial system. All of those are breaking down, and that again is all well designed. However, my caveat around the world that we live in now is the one law that I know is true is you cannot have a physical crisis without having a spiritual crisis on its heels. And so because we are going through physical crisis, because everyone is in the unknown, then the rug is pulled out from underneath us, and we have no other option but to start looking within. And I know we are going to see more division before we see it coming together, but there will come a point when the pivot has to redirect. The pendulum will swing. That is always happened throughout history, and it will take every one of us to do our part through loving engagement and compassion and reaching across the aisle. And it's difficult to love those who challenge us, but it is also the greatest opportunity to put a mirror in front of our face and ask ourselves, what is it within me that is causing this? It's easy to love the beautiful, clean child. It's easy to love a partner who dotes on us. The challenge that we all have the opportunity as a spiritual being in this physical realm is to love those who we do not understand. And that takes loving ourselves first. But that is something that I think is really important. So we're watching physical crisis play out for the next for this while. And I think it's going to be another year of that. But the spiritual advancement that's going to come after this is going to be a beautiful gift.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Sheila, thank you for that question. Now, I want to see, it looks like Blossoming Lotus may have a question too, and I know Jamie has an answer. Can you all stay a little bit longer so that we could keep going for a little bit, or how's everybody's time? Are we okay? Okay, good. Vicky's okay. Bree's okay. Blossom. Okay. And Shaun, you're cool? Okay, good. Okay, so Jamie, can you unmute and answer Sheila's question, please?
Yeah, for some reason, I got this impression about just acceptance. And I honestly don't know what it means, but the word acceptance just came to my mind. Me trying to live like a path of non-duality and trying with everything I am to not judge, and myself included. And I'm not saying this is an easy thing, and judgments come up for me, and I immediately in my mind, I actually say in my mind, stop. And so I don't really have my thoughts together on it, but the impression that I got was just some sense of acceptance, which I'm not sure what that means.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think so much of this is it's what's the gift in everything. because those triggers are a gift to know where we have work to do, right? That's the acceptance part too. Okay, so thank you. And Sheila, did you have anything you wanted to add before we? Okay, great, great. Oh, I wish I was with you guys. So yeah, have a great time. So Blossoming Lotus, do you want to unmute and ask your question, share your thoughts? Can you unmute? Oh, here, I'll ask you to. There we go.
I
There you
actually
go.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you, everybody. I've been working, I'm a custodian, I've been vacuuming, and it's been really great to hear all your wonderful stories. Um, I've never had any experience, but I'm of the belief that things don't have to get to a crisis moment for me to have an expansion. But anyway, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you. So I didn't want to leave you out because I think what these people have been very modest about their superpowers, that their perspective of life after they've seen and experienced the void or the essence of love that we really are is quite remarkable. And that's why I'm so excited to meet all of them in person in a week or so at Ian's event. And if you can't come to the Ian's event in person, they do record it. So you can buy a ticket and get either watch it online or get recordings later on, because you'll find you'll be eating dinner at your TV tables, watching those sessions for a long time afterwards, because the articulation of this space is so mystical. It's like a connection, a heart opening, just like a rose, a bud opening, opening full. And each person has a little piece of the puzzle of that articulation. It's quite amazing. So Victoria, would you like to wrap us up, since you're the leader of this band here?
Oh, sure. I do want to add one really quick thing about the division. The insight that I had a while ago about that is that the division actually is part of the illusion, and that it actually doesn't exist. It's just a narrative that's created to keep us divided and conquered. So the more we start to recognize that the division actually is part of the illusion, and that it was created to keep us from finding the true greatness and power within ourselves, and no longer hold ourselves as victims to the illusion of division, that we find the power of love to unite and to see everyone, regardless of who they are, what label they happen to wear, because these really are just nothing more than labels. And, we start to drop our labels and remember that we are all one and the same. And then when that happens, our entire reality will shift, because we will learn how to self-govern through love and acceptance of each other for who we are, as love having a human experience. So that's my wrap up for that. I want to thank all of you who are here. I am so excited to be a part of this group, to be chosen to moderate this group. And it has been amazing in getting to hear each of these stories and getting to expand more on them at IANS. At IANS, we have more time to expand on our stories and our experiences. And what a gift and a blessing IANS is, and how this event itself is helping to change the world and giving people permission to share their experiences. I'm finding almost every day I meet more people that have had either a near-death experience or a spiritual experience, and IANS is kind of creating this wave that is allowing people to what I call come out of the spiritual closet and express the experience that they've had. And as each of us learn to embrace with love and gratitude for the experience, the sooner we'll create heaven on earth and that new earth we're all talking about. So I'm just thrilled to be a part of this group and to have been invited to participate with IANS this year as a presenter rather than just an attendee, although being an attendee is amazing as well. So yeah, thank you. And thank you, Kathy, for inviting us to share this.
I think this is fantastic. I can't wait to meet you all in person and give you hugs. And I really am excited about the new earth that this Love Fest is causing. I want you to know that you'll feel it. If you're sensitive and you walk into the building, you will feel it's like you're walking straight into a vortex of pure love. And you'll, even with some of the people who are scientists and researchers, so they have a little more on the left-hand side going than the heart. It's palpable. And so the first time I walked in, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm home. I'm with my people. So I just want to just appreciate you to the max for your contribution to this, and know that this is part of the journey to wholeness for humanity that we all signed up to do. And just so much gratitude. So with that, I hope everyone that's on Facebook will pass this on and let this tidal wave of love increase and grow and make a difference in the world. So with that, I think I'll say with the video will be on Co-Creators Convergence YouTube channel, and it will be on their website within probably 2 weeks or a week or so. Okay, so welcome. And if you guys want to know more about CCC, if you love this, you'll love that too. So anyway, thank you all. Bless you so much. Appreciate it.